Welcome back. We've completed chapter 1, and what I want to do in this session is just talk about the material at the end of the chapter. We only had 21 pages of material covered in the chapter, and we have about 25 pages of material at the end of the chapter. So the material at the end of the chapter is just as important, or maybe more important, than the material we cover in the chapter. If you go to look in your book on pages 22 and 23, you see what's called at a glance. Remember, I mentioned this in the introduction to the book. But in the left column, and this is an excellent way to study for your test, in the left column is your key points. The column beside that, the second column, is the key learning outcomes. And then you have the example exercise column and the practice exercise column. The example exercises are the exercises that were covered in the chapter itself. The practice exercises are the exercises that you can do to make sure that you understand the concept that was discussed. If you'll look about the middle of page 22, your key learning outcome was describe and give an example of what's meant by the cost concept. When we talked about that cost concept, we talked about purchasing a building. And we would want to make sure we recorded the cost of the building on the accounting records and its actual cost. Well, sometimes that can be a little confusing. And so example exercise 1.1 gives you an example of the different documents you would see if you purchased a building. And then practice exercise 1-1A and 1-1B, they're on page 27. Those two practice exercises, if you get those correct, that means you pretty much mastered that concept. So you use these or try to do your practice exercises. If you have a problem with them, look back at the example exercise that was, which is a example of those practice exercises, and it's shown in detail. So you should be able to take that example exercise and work your practice exercises. At the bottom of page 23 and the top of page 24 are the key terms that we discussed during this chapter. There's about probably 50 or more terms. I told you accountants have their own language, and you need to start developing this language. You need to make sure you know what account form is. We talked about account form when we was looking at our balance sheet. The balance sheet that we showed, the particular balance sheet we showed, had assets on the left and liabilities and owner's equity on the right, which is called the account form. But it gives you the term and then what page that term is covered on. So make sure you understand these terms. If you don't know, go back to the page that it tells you it's on and read about it and make sure you understand. So you've got your at a glance, and then you got your key terms, and then the next section's an illustrative problem. This problem illustrates everything that we talked about during the chapter. Remember how we did our transaction? This one goes through about 10 or 15 transactions, and you can see those transactions recorded in the accounting equation at the top of page 25. And you can see the statements that were developed, the income statement, statement of owner's equity, the balance sheet, and the statement of cash flows that were developed from this information in this problem. So you get a chance to see how that what we did in the chapter, how it's repeated here, and how the statements are prepared, and then you have some self-examination questions, and it tells you the answers to these, and these are just multiple choice. The answers to these are just on the last page of this material, which I think is page 47, I believe. Page 47. So those answers are covered on page 47. Then you got your eye openers, and it's just another set of questions to help you do this. And then you got your practice exercises, those on the 10 pages. And then you have your actual exercises, and these are the ones that you've been assigned to do. And these I will not have you turn these in I do give you the answers to these in each chapter, so you do need to work through the ones that you're assigned to do. Make sure you can work through them and get the right answers. If you have problems with them, make sure you contact me, and I'll see what I can do to maybe clear it up for you. And then we have the problems, and we have two sets of series of problems. We have problems A and problems B. And a couple of these problems I have assigned. I do expect you to do these. You can either do them in Word, you can do them in Excel, or you can, if you bought the workbook, you can do them on the workbook pages, scan them in. But I do want those submitted to me through the Dropbox. And these problems will count 5% of your grade. So it's not a tremendous amount, but 5 points can make the difference between an A and a B, or a B and a C, and a C and a D. So make sure you do all your problems and submit those through the Dropbox. The first ones that'll be due are actually, I believe, in week 2. I'll have that Dropbox sitting out there for week 2, and you'll submit those to me. And as soon as I get them, I'll take a look at them and then send you back some response back to it. You actually have the answers to those problems, so you shouldn't all make 100 on the problems, but I do want you to submit them. And remember, they have to be submitted by the due date. If not, you'll get at least a 25-point deduction for turning them in late, if I accept them at all. If they're more than a week late, they probably won't be accepted at all. And then at the very end of the chapter, there's just some special activities. It talks about, it's got one about ethics, one about net income, one about transactions, financial statements, one about certification requirements for accountants, one about cash flows, and then one about financial analysis. So I hope you enjoy this book. Like I said, I think it's really a well-written book. Gives you a lot of material to make sure that you master the concepts for that chapter. And we're only covering 6 chapters this quarter. So next week we'll get, you should read chapter 2 this week. This is week 2. Read chapter 2 this week, and then we will go through it next week. And again, I hope you have a great day, and everything goes well for you. Thank you.